Do you believe that Greece should have made her own memorandum, a national memorandum, coming from the Greek politician, and in there should be some clever solutions like the one that you propose with the receipts and the lottery?
Yes, I think it would have been highly desirable if there had been an endogenous and autonomous response to the crisis and to the imposition of the memorandum as an alternative, because one thing is to say the memorandum is not perfect, it needs to be redesigned, but then of course the question is what do you propose as an alternative? And I think it has always been on the table that if Greek authorities had come forward with a credible plan that was really emanating from Greek society at large, government, academics, NGOs, etc., the creditors would have been quite receptive. Now, what is a bit disappointing is that it never actually came from Greek authorities. These discussions about a Greek growth plan have been on the table for the last few years as a possible alternative or a modification of the MOU. However, it has remained at the level of statements, but not much action. Now, there are many initiatives that the Greek authorities could propose that do not involve a large budgetary cost. Some of them do, but not all of them. And if Greek authorities had really decided to push for them, I'm pretty sure that creditors would have been receptive to the idea.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, one example which has been mentioned, but no concrete action was ever taken, was to design smart ways to close the so-called VAT gap. That is to say, the difference between what is collected in VAT and what should be collected if compliance was higher, if all the transactions that have to pay VAT did pay VAT. Now, this example or this initiative is a very simple but very smart idea that has been implemented in Southeast Asia since the 1950s. It started in Taiwan, and it has been implemented in a number of countries, and generally speaking, the success has been a great success. The idea is very simple. Each time you issue a receipt, you allow the consumer to use that receipt and put it into a drawer, so that it becomes part of a so-called lottery. It's not really lottery because you don't pay, you just participate. And there's a random draw from this pool of receipts, and some receipts receive a prize. It can be a small prize, a big prize. You can have all little different details, but that's the basic idea. This system is potentially very attractive because you give incentives to all consumers, but you only reward the winners. So it's cheap in budgetary costs. It's also what we call in economics incentive compatible. Consumers will have an incentive to ask for receipts, especially if the prizes are big. But even very big prizes for 10 people or 5 people is very little money, but the incentive can be very large. It so happened that in Greece, a researcher in a public research center in Demokritos, Mr. Vassiliou, developed a technology and patented the technology to run the whole lottery on something which is very popular in Greece, which is mobile phones. So you didn't even need to have a large technological infrastructure, a large investment to run that lottery. It could be done on a very cheap, because all Greeks have phones. Greek technology developed by a publicly funded research center. The devil is in the detail in all these initiatives, but we had, in collaboration with Greek authorities, made some proposals. Unfortunately, it never took off. There's been lip service paid to it. It has reappeared once in a while in different official documents saying this system, which has a name, which is apodixy, will bring in millions of euros of extra VAT revenue, but it's still there. Never concrete steps to implementation.
Have you thought, instead of proposing that to the Greek government, to propose that to Troika?
Well, the Troika, it's as a non-Troika member, although having worked in the EU for the task force of Greece, I've never quite understood who took the decision and how. We have, of course, following the Greek proposal, and we thought it was a smart one, we drew the Troika's attention to it. Part of the Troika was receptive, but they thought it was not ambitious enough. And in my view, in Greece, given all the difficulties, it's good to start small to see if it works, and then one can afford the luxury of being ambitious. Other parts of the Troika seemed not to be receptive to the idea for reasons that are difficult to understand. As an economist, I honestly was never confronted with a valid argument why not trying it on a small scale, on a pilot basis, which would have been almost costless. And as an economist, I always think in terms of the balance of expected costs, and there they were low, they were very low, and expected benefits that potentially were very high. So as an economist, I would say, I cannot guarantee that it would work, but the cost of trying a small-scale pilot is very small. The upside of actually managing to get more VAT receipts being issued and more VAT paid is huge, given that the so-called VAT tax gap in Greece, the difference between what you should get and what you actually getting, more than doubled between 2001 and 2011.